Welcome back. The sixth edition of the Africa CEO Forum is in its second and final day in Abidjan, the Ivorian capital, and participants have been exchanging their views and opinions on some of the uprising and existing issues affecting the economic development of African countries. The channel's business editor, Bosun Omofaye, who's covering the event, had a conversation with the CEO of Quantum Global Research Switzerland, Mr. Ncube, on the sidelines of the forum, and they talked about the new intra-Africa trade agreement and the company's new investment climate report on Africa Investment Index.
We're interested in Africa being an investment destination, but the key issue always is political risk, yes, local currency risk, foreign exchange risk, and the market risk. Do you think these risks are being well mitigated to make way for Africa in the emerging global scenario to hold this foreign portfolio investment that sometimes disappear at the slightest indication of political uncertainty in any of our jurisdictions on the continent?
Yes, there are several risks that one encounters when they're investing in Africa. And I must say that, between the local politicians, the local policymakers and economic managers, the foreign community, there's always a concerted effort to bring these risks down. For example, on political risk, I think it's fair to say that most conflicts or conflictual situations in Africa are tending to get resolved even much faster than before. That's the trend we've seen over the last 20 years. Number two, when it comes to economic management, every economic manager, central bank, minister of finance, they are really trying to do the right thing. Manage the economy well, bring down the exchange rate risk and volatility, bring down inflation, bring down foreign debt. It's not surprising that quite a few countries are actually issuing debt abroad in the Eurobond market, for example. That is testimony to the fact that they are reducing these risks. And for foreign direct investors who are long-term, most of the risks have to do with the certainty of contracts and enforceability. All that has been improving over time. So I would say really overall, risks in Africa are coming down, and they've been coming down. Investment index and report tries to be more comprehensive. The lens is broader. It is not just governance or the narrow doing business indicators or just exchange rate risk. It is broader. So it reveals how, for instance, the size of the economy is important. The size of the population is important. Short-term risks are also important, exchange rate risk and the ease of doing business, but also connectivity of the population through, as measured by the Facebook penetration rate, for instance, is also very important. And that's just a proxy for a ability of people to connect with each other. This is new. This has not been done before. So we use a much broader lens in our approach to giving a profile, investment profile of a country. If we look at intra-Africa trade, just use that variable as a measure of degree of integration, it's only about 15%. It's much higher in East Africa, more like 25%, and certain parts of West Africa also higher than the 15%, but it is low. So there's a need to therefore create broader markets. So the recent signing off by the AU leadership in Kigali of a free trade area, Pan-African-wise, is a step in the right direction. But I must say that these things take time to really implement. Their effect also takes a lot of time because Africa is small manufacturing sectors. So there's very little not a lot more that we can trade with each other. But there's an imperative to create bigger markets to attract foreign investors. So that when they go into a region, it's about 2 or 3 countries that they're looking into and not just one single country. On the financial assets, it's actually even worse than in the real unfinancialized market. So you look at the stock exchanges, they're very small, cross-listings, few and far between. More of this should happen. There should be more cross-listings, absolutely. But also there's need to innovate, for instance, by creating maybe exchange-traded funds that includes securities from different markets. In Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, South Africa, Rwanda or Zambia, all in one vehicle for investment. That is doable. So not just cross-listing, but cross-listing within one instrument. So an investor comes through one single door, but then is exposed to a variety of markets. So we also need to innovate. There's an opportunity to innovate. If you consider the listed market, for example, since 2008, the top African markets, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, Tunisia, and I'm going to exclude South Africa for now, those markets have just done as well as the S&P 500 in the US. They've just done as well as the American market. If you risk adjust the returns as well, they're just as good as the American market, using that as a global benchmark. So Africa does offer very good risk-adjusted returns. The returns are even higher in the unlisted market, in the private equity space, because you're coming in at lower prices, and the uplift is quite phenomenal.
Now, Nigeria's tax reforms focuses on growing its tax-to-GDP ratio from 6%, but taxpayers and consultants believe that the bulk of the reforms are more focused on the formal sectors. This and more issues were raised at a meeting by concerned operator Mr. Woye Obayemi, who is one of the partners on tax, regulatory and people services at professional services firm KPMG.
People in formal employment feels cheated and unfairly treated. Their focus is more on their employers. But what are the state governments doing? What's the FRS also doing in order to reach the unreached people in the informal sector to ensure that they pay their taxes as well? I remember growing up, my father was one of the old provincial councillors in Western region. And when he retired, he was actually made a tax collector for my hometown and then the communities around us. People used to come to queue to pay taxes. They saw it as a responsibility that they had to do. But now it's not, because over time we focus on crude oil as a source of revenue. So that tax culture now needs to be brought back in order to ensure that everyone pays tax. And for Lagos State in particular, where we have HNIs, again, I think you can actually collect more money from the HNIs than you're currently making from those of us who are in employment. And efforts have to be made. We feel, as observers, that maybe some people are seen as, sacred cows. We know who they are visible in society, but how much tax really are they paying? And that really needs to be done. So I believe tax to GDP ratio can be enhanced, and the resources are there for government to be able to do that. The people are there. For instance, okay, in the informal sector, for instance, there is a limit to how much cash people can keep in their homes. So some of the millions have to be in the banks, or if not billions. And what collaboration does the FRS have with the banks, with the central bank, if you need to make a law or a regulation in order to ensure that FRS, the state tax authorities, can leverage on the customers' bank data to be able to ask them questions as to how much they need to pay, that should be done. Technology, some progress is being made, but it's actually too slow. Technology is an accelerator for any business activity. Okay, it's okay to file VAT, but we also need to be able to file companies' income tax returns. So June is coming now, 30th June. We'd like to really see that happen so that all taxpayers, as many as want to use technology to file their returns online, they'll be able to do that. And then more than that also is the open access for transparency. As a taxpayer, I would like to have access to my withholding tax account on the FRS portal, because it's not all the time where the withholding tax credit notes are actually given to taxpayers. So that should be done so that when I'm therefore filing my tax returns, I know what I can claim. Again, you can also use taxpayers' data to do analytics, particularly for the purpose of risk profiling of taxpayers. Why is it that some companies will be audited maybe once in 2 years, and yet there are companies for 6 years have not been audited at all? I think you really need to look into that in order to ensure that people don't feel over-oppressed, by the FRS, while others are being left out.
And that's where we end today's program. Thank you for watching. I am Bisi Adebayo.